everyone. Good evening. I'll now call the meeting to order for February the 20th. And we'll have an update with regards to the closed session from our clerk, Mr. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick closed meeting reports. Back on February 5th, 2018, after the conclusion of the regular council meeting, council did go back into closed session in order to receive an update on the status of current town litigation and potential litigation files, and this was pursuant to section 239(2)(e). On February 15th, council met in closed session in order to receive financial information in connection with and to view a proposed lease of a certain property by the municipality, and this was pursuant to 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act. And then earlier this evening, council met in closed session in order to discuss and share information on a proposed lease of property. And once again, this is pursuant to section 239(2)(c). Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. At this time, I'll ask if there are any conflicts of interest with tonight's agenda. No, thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Roger.
Item 4 on the agenda is adoption of published agenda, that the published agenda be adopted either as presented or amended. And through the chair, I do have one item with council's consent that we'd be looking to add to the agenda for tonight. And this would be correspondence from Cynthia Cakebread, our manager of recreation and culture. This is a notification to the town that the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Committee will be hosting a sip and paint program. We sent that to council later today, and we're looking to add that to the agenda as council's endorsement is required for that event.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Snively.
Your worship, if council would allow, when it comes to reports, if we could move up one report on the Arrow streetscape. Tammy Affleck's here from Liberal Credit Union manager, and she'd like to speak on the issue.
You'd like to make that motion, sir?
I would make that motion, please.
Or by
if I could have the seconder.
Councilor Bondi. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce a notice of motion later on in the meeting as well.
Thank you. Now we need a motion to receive all this for tonight's agenda. Councilor Snively, Councilor Dortmund, questions? On favor? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 5 is adoption of minutes, that the minutes from the February 5th, 2018 council meeting be adopted as circulated.
Supported by Councilor Bondi, Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? All in favor? Carries.
Item 6, under public presentations, our first presentation this evening is the presentation of the Community Heritage Preservation Awards. Mayor McDermott and Deputy Mayor Malash, as chair of the Heritage Committee, will be presenting to 2 local community members and giving them recognition for their efforts to preserve our local history by initiating heritage designations for their residents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we recognize 2 citizens who have helped to celebrate and protect our community's rich heritage. On behalf of the Essex Municipal Heritage Committee, which I'm chair, I'm excited to announce the first 2 winners of our new Community Heritage Preservation Awards. These annual awards raise awareness of the importance of heritage preservation to our social and economic development by recognizing individuals who exemplify good preservation practices and encourage others to do the same. Tonight, we recognize 2 community residents. First of all, Lori Kodiak, and secondly, Andreas Werig. Both started the heritage designation process for their own homes. Lori at 79 Fox Street in Essex Center, and Andreas at 1215 Isler Road in Colchester. Their homes are believed to have been built in the late 1800s and have significant historical value. Lori's home once was known as the Essex House and was used primarily as a boarding house by railway employees and workers, and later as a hotel. Andreas's home resides on property that was once part of a larger Isler settlement and one of Colchester's earliest families. Through their efforts to designate these buildings, Lori and Andreas have become two shining examples of citizens leading the charge in recognizing and protecting some of the amazing heritage assets that we have in our community. Thank you both for your service to this community, and I'd like to invite Lori and Andreas. Andreas, we noticed earlier wasn't here, but maybe if you're here in the audience, please do come up to receive plaques that we have made to honor these individuals. Oh, Mr. Andreas right there. Mr. Mayor, if you could come up and join me.
Right out front of us there.
Come right up. Come right up over here. The mayor's got some, Mayor and I are gonna, Mayor, maybe you can hang a note there, Mr. Murray, and I'll hang one over here. Right up closer to the council here. We also have, this evening, we've had some more books published of the Colchester 225, 150 historical facts. We've been asked to have some more of these printed, so we've done additional copies. We're presenting each of these great community leaders in heritage preservation. One of these books this evening, if anybody else would like one, though, they're $20. And Rita Jabor, our assistant planner here, is help you out with any one of these for $20. We'll give this to you. Now, before we take the pictures, Nadine is here from Tracy Ramsey's office, and she also has something for us. Thanks, Nadine. So we'll just step back a little bit. We'll stand on this one. I'll stand behind the mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just want to mention while I have the mic here too, it is Heritage Week here in the town of Essex, and we have many events. If you can go to our website to find out the events that we do have scheduled for this week. There's schedules some speaker for tomorrow at Eckers, I believe. And then again on Thursday night, we're in cooperation with Ayers from Arrow. The Heritage Committee has Seamus Gunn coming out to do a presentation, and this is the second of a two-part presentation that he's done with us, and it was fantastic the first time. Come on out and join us on Thursday night. Times are posted on the website. And if anybody wants to step out after because the presentations are done, if you want to step out, don't feel like you've got to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash, for that. Nice job.
Next on the agenda is item 6.2 under public presentations, feasibility of fiber optics throughout the town of Essex. This is in conjunction with information or IT report, Information Technology Report 2018-01. Are here to present this evening from the Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, SWIFT, is Adriana Decker.
Where'd she go? You're there already. Thank you very much, Adriana.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you very much for having me. Mr. Barron has asked me to come and give an update to council on the Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology Initiative. And so I'll sort of run through this, and please feel free to stop me if any of you have questions or any concerns with the information provided this evening. So I'll just give you a project review, an update, and then there's some Q&A. If anyone has any answers or any questions, I can happy to answer those for you. Our coverage area expands far greater than just the County of Essex. It actually represents 25% of Ontario's population, and the idea is that, you know, in the rural areas of southwestern Ontario, Bell and the other, you know, larger providers are having a hard time justifying a return on investment for areas that are very rural to build out fiber, and so that's where SWIFT comes in. And this is the coverage area that we plan to roll out fiber within the next 3 to 4 years. So we are in phase 1. We've just submitted or released an RFP for our what we call our NetCo, which is our core and aggregation networks. So if you just take a look at the red and yellow dots on the coverage map, so we've released an RFP for the fiber builds for these areas. This essentially will take a county like Essex and give it a full redundant fiber backbone connection right to 151 Front and possibly over to 350 Main in Buffalo for disaster recovery purposes. Later in the year, starting in June, we are going to be releasing the OPCO RFPs. Those are the access RFPs that actually bring the fiber diffusion into the various areas within the County of Essex, which you are, of course, a partner, and we've been working hand in hand with Wendy St. Armour, and the County of Essex is in really good shape in terms of the information that you've provided to us thus far. And so, as I mentioned, SWIFT was conceptualized because there's a lot of very rural areas that don't have fiber, and it's how do we get fiber? Our internet is too slow. What can we do about it? Nobody's coming into my area to build fiber. So we have this unequal access to digital services, infrastructure funding gaps, typically no market choice, and little incentive for the providers to change. And so that's what SWIFT is here to sort of fix, because it's not a joke. Every cow literally wears a Fitbit now. That Fitbit has to connect to the internet, and even agriculture, they're the biggest users of broadband, nowadays. And so how do we get them a decent connection so that they can, run their business and have the same advantages of everyone else? So broadband essentially is considered a utility. We need people to start thinking about access to the internet the same way we do as road infrastructure, power, water, etc. It's the way we do business now. So this is just a bit of a marketing slide, but we believe, like Wayne Gretzky, you have to skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been. So that's why SWIFT is only investing in fiber, while there's great other technologies like fiber to the node, fiber to the home, wireless, etc. SWIFT is a $300 million government, federally and provincially funded program, and we believe that fiber is the only technology that will really stand the test of time. 10 and 20 years down the road, it's the only medium that's truly scalable. As I just made a quick mention there of our funding, we do have $90 million from the federal government, $90 million from the provincial. We expect to receive about $90 million from the private sector and the telecommunication service providers. And then, of course, we have the $18 million from municipal funding and our partners, which, of course, Essex County is one of those. We are very active in growing our membership base. And what this means is we really need the service providers to change. And the way we can do that is when we go to RFP, we put everybody's sites, 3,000 public sector sites, is the grand total, what we'd like to achieve when we go to RFP, and we put all of those sites in an RFP, so that the rates we're getting back for Essex, they're going to be no different than up in Simcoe County or over in Niagara Region, and the idea of an NDA goes away. We want to achieve is rate parity, so we're in good stead. We have over 1,500 members so far. We've only been collecting members for about 6 months. So the idea is to go out to RFP as a large conglomerate or a buying group to achieve one goal, because what we want to do is create more competition between the service providers to get better services at better rates for the folks in your communities. And so this is just sort of exactly how SWIFT plans to be built out. We call it the SWIFT effect. So this is phase one. You know, any given community, you have, you know, houses, municipal buildings, hospitals, a couple of wireless towers, and what you have is some existing infrastructure. Part of it could be owned by, say, Cogeco, another part by Gosfield, maybe Bell. And so what SWIFT wants to do is we want to build a network that sort of bonds all of these various networks together. And if you notice over on the left-hand side where the red line kind of overlapped the orange line, sometimes we have to upgrade. So what we're going to fund is for brand new fiber in your areas, and we'll only fund overbuilds where it's necessary. We might do some upgrades to the existing POPs and build some new SWIFT POPs. And then what we do, which is very different than today, is we put a splice point about every kilometer or so. What that means is any service provider now can jump onto this network and provide services to your businesses and residents. And what that means is greater competition onto the network and greater coverage. So, you know, that's a very important part of what SWIFT is funding. It has to be open access, because what we want to do is have many service providers over the network. The funding gap in southwestern Ontario is much greater than $300 million. It's probably, you know, somewhere between $4 and $7 billion to bring fiber truly to every home and business. So what SWIFT plans to do is roll out a broadband development fund to make the project sustainable. And what that means is if SWIFT is funding a service provider, we'll take a small residual from that service provider for every service they sell on the network, and we'll roll that back into the broadband development fund to continue the build out so that it looks like this one day. We keep building fiber, there's more splice points, more service providers, and eventually you get blanket coverage. So that's the idea of the SWIFT effect over time. And what we mean by open access, this is a great pictorial. You know, the government doesn't build two roads, one for UPS and one for FedEx to deliver your packages. So why do we spend all of this money on different networks? You know, maybe it be Bell, maybe Rogers. To build fiber is so costly. The SWIFT idea is we're going to build one fiber optic highway and everybody gets to use that highway. So that's just a pictorial on that. We do have 20 capital partners, the original 15 Western Ontario Wardens Caucus members, along with Caledon, Niagara Region, Waterloo, Orillia, and Windsor, who have also committed capital to the project. We are still working with a few other municipalities, and that's how we got our total of, we're just over 17 million, and the goal is 18 to 20 million. So we've just kicked off, our RFPQ was completed. We have 28 pre-qualified providers. The NETCO RFP, which if you can recall the red and the yellow dots on the coverage map, that RFP was released back in January, and we're going to start building that network later this year. And then the OPCO RFPs will be released probably by Q3 of 2018. And right now we're doing all the consultations with our partners. As I mentioned, County of Essex, we're happy to say, has been very proactive. We have your list of sites. County of Essex has included all the lower tier municipality and gotten all that site information. So what that means is when we go out to RFP, there's 20 capital contributing partners, and we have probably 30 RFPs to roll out. So the counties and communities that are best suited and best ready to go and given us all that information, they're going to be the first RFPs to hit the street. And so, like I said, we're happy to say that County of Essex has been very, very proactive. So that's great. Don't want to bore you with too much of this fact-based decision-making stuff, but it is important. We are working with University of Guelph they're collecting all of the data and holding it under NDA. So they have all of the service provider information, user surveys, all of the economic and social data that we need. We have it all mapped out into a GIS database. And what that means is there is no government-funded program to date that has ever established a baseline so that they could measure the actual effectiveness of the government dollars after they've been spent to build out the network. So that's why we're partnered up with R2B2. So we do have a well-established baseline, and we can see how effective the project was. And as I said, they're just collecting data in terms of, where are the must-sector sites? What do the providers have in the areas? Where are the gaps? What needs to be addressed? And then there's also user surveys as well as in terms of what's out there for the businesses and residents in your community. These are our 28 qualified providers, so that's good news. And all of these providers have shared data with us with regards to exactly where their fiber assets are. And there is an appointed person from County of Essex, and I believe that's Wendy, who actually has visibility to see. It's held under a high NDA, but we have shared this data with Essex in terms of what's in the ground and where and when it expires and that sort of thing. The Netco build bidders, which is the core and aggregation network, here are our bidders on that. That's the RFP that was just released on January 3rd. And so next steps, we are collecting survey information. So what's very important is we get feedback from your residents. We want to know who is in desperate need of better broadband. Students need to do homework at school. Patients need healthcare at home. We really need to hear from your residents and business users. So I mean, the SWIFT survey is on the website, and if we can get it out to you to somehow push out to the residents, the more feedback we have, the better we're able to determine where the dollars are going to be spent in Essex County to roll out fiber. So this is the time where we need to define those coverage areas and get feedback from you so that we can finalize those areas, and then we're ready to go out to RFP by June, summer timeframe of 2018. And so this is just our timing. We have about a 4 or 5 month window now to collect this data. So like I said, it goes beyond just the site information from the county. We need your resident and business user information as well. So whatever you can do to push out those surveys, the better for all concerned. And this is just our last slide. So again, 25% of Ontario's population, if we all aggregate our demand, we're going to have data-driven decisions, better services for all of the residents and businesses combined, and that's what the SWIFT solution hopes to achieve. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions? Okay, Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just more of comments and maybe a few questions, but that was really good. That was insightful. I was hoping that we would have something that gave our residents and our council some information and something to look forward to. So you did just that. I think my question might be to Mr. Barron, actually. Do we have a good gauge on our municipality in terms of pockets of need? And maybe perhaps this is where we would bring our manager of communications in at some point, and we would do like some sort of needs analysis, right? Like survey, which may be hard to do if we don't have internet everywhere, if we're trying to do it online. So I don't know, just kind of looking to see where in our municipality should we be targeting this, and do we need any council support? Do we need any budgetary dollars? And also, how do we collect this public feedback?
Well, actually, that's kind of what she had mentioned, that the County of Essex, Wendy Santamore, has information we've collected through GIS. The SWIFT project, or the SWIFT team also has that information through Cogeco, Bell, Gospel, Tel, and I think there's a couple other providers locally, but they're not, we're not privy to that information as of yet. It's being held very confidential because they're kind of, I think they're trying to get pole position on where they're building their network. So we do have a map. It's a little, it's dated from a project that, or a grant that we applied for, and I don't think much has changed since then. But I think when you requested some information on this, it was more of a, there's lots coming. We just have to kind of sit back and wait and see. SWIFT coming in, building that backbone network, and then working with the different internet service providers to do that last mile. So they're going to be the ones who will be able to connect all those rural areas.
If I can just add to that, if you would like my contact information, I'm sure you can get it from Mr. Barron, and I'm happy to send you the link. The link is very easy to the surveys, and the more people in your areas that are filling out the surveys, the more intel we have to where fiber is most needed. Because even the CRTC doesn't really have that, and then Bell's making announcements, they're building here, they're building there, but we're, our fingers on the pulse, so we're working with all these data, like the service providers, with Bell to make sure that if we have only 300 million, if Bell's already planning to build out in Amherstburg, well, then we're going to put our dollars elsewhere. We're also ear to the ground on the Connect to Innovate program, which is another government-funded initiative, and we work at all levels of ministry to make sure that if somebody's covering an area somewhere already, then we're going to take our dollars and put them where they're most needed, and the surveys will really help. So any information you need, feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you. I don't know if, I didn't see your presentation in our agenda package, but I don't know if that presentation is emailable. If you could send it to us, that would be great. And I don't know if we can post the link to the survey on our website. I don't know, but that would be a nice option. And then we can even send out a media release that we do have the link to our website, so we can hopefully capture more feedback.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for coming.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not that good with the technology here, so it's good to get more info. One of my questions is, the way this runs, so it's going to be a fiber network. Are we building from the north to the south, or I'm just kind of looking at where you're developing? Where are we as far as on the agenda of Essex County showing up as a build?
Right, okay, that's a very good question. A lot of people ask that. So the reason for releasing several RFPs in tandem is just so that we don't have to build from north to south or east to west. What we want to do is the counties and the municipalities that are first to go to market with the RFPs, they're going to be the first ones released. And we want to have several of them so we can combat sort of, or kill two birds with one stone. We don't want a winner take all where it's just one incumbent provider. We want the opportunity for even the smaller telecommunication service providers to be able to bid on just smaller chunks of the build. It'll get us built quicker, and more areas can be built at one time. So I guess in a nutshell, we hope to have all of the RFPs out by the end of 2018 and then start building by end of 2018 and early 2019. And again, the municipalities that have the best data submitted back to SWIFT will be the first RFPs that are able to hit the street. And like I said, Essex is doing a great job. So
Further to that, just one other question. My other question is, who is SWIFT? We've heard a lot SWIFT is doing things, but
yeah,
who is
so
SWIFT?
we're all virtual. It's a team of consultants that have been, working and spearheading the project for a long time. Lobbied to the government to get municipal funding to build fiber where nobody would. There was a program in Eastern Ontario, the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, called EORN, and it was very similar, but we sort of took that project, lobbied to say, hey, we need this out in the West as well. We learned from what they did and best practices and some mistakes as well. And so we've been working on this for about 5 years. Our funding got announced in 2016, and we've done feasibility studies. As I said, right now in our GIS system, we've interviewed every service provider. We have all of the assets mapped out. We are collecting all the information in terms of where are the sites that need to be collected, the user surveys, to find out where the gaps truly are, and then we'll take, the funding that's allotted and try to adjust as much as the problem as we possibly can with that. So it's typically, our CEO was the IT director for Grey County. So it's just a team of consultants just trying to pull the project off.
Thank you, sir. Anything further? Okay. Looking for a motion to receive. Councilor Bonnie, Councilor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, young
Thank
lady.
you.
Safe trip home.
Thank you.
first report this evening, Mr. Chair, has moved up on the adopted agenda from item 8.5 is Economic Development Report 2018-03, Re-Herald Streetscape Plan. That said report be received and that council approve the funding and issuance of an RFP to secure a consultant for the development of a long-term streetscape improvement plan.
Thank you for that, sir. Councilor Bondi.
Mr. Mayor, I believe before we adopt this report, Councillor Snively had Ms. Tammy Affleck speaking in support of it, if council would entertain the idea. I think that's what,
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
motion supported by Councilor, those two councilors. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Young lady, welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak to you for a moment. I'm actually the president of the Harrow Chamber of Commerce, and that's who I'm representing tonight. How's that? Okay. I'm actually representing the Harrow Chamber of Commerce. I'm the president at this time. And I just have a couple of comments for you in support of this initiative. I would like to ensure that a streetscape plan is developed for Harrow itself. I know that there's been a plan developed for Essex and for Colchester, but each center is just a little bit different. I think that the general public should be consulted in connection with the plan to have their buy-in, because we don't have a BIA, and I think at some point in time we probably are going to have to do some landscaping, or I'm sorry, some fundraising in order to get the project completed. I think that if the town as a whole contributes to the plan and the development of it, they're going to be more supportive of that. And I also feel that we have one chance to really develop our vision and make it our own and establish our identity to bring businesses and people to our town. We need to be a destination and we need to market as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Comments? Councilor Bondi.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Affleck, for your comments. And there is a notice of motion later on in this agenda that I believe if we adopt the recommendations from the report, we can axe the notice of motion because it's kind of redundant. And then maybe I can relax and have my baby. And I can go home. Yeah, so when the time is right, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendations and move ahead with the report, with the tendering. One comment I would like to make about doing public consultation. I would love to get the tender out as soon as possible. My one worry would be that we have public consultation that ends up in July and August. I'd like to avoid that. Live and learn from the ward boundary review. Public open houses, I did not find were well attended in July and August. So I don't know if we can put that in the tender, or once we hire so-called consultants, we can talk to them about not hosting consultation in those 2 months.
Thank you. Any comments with regards to this report? No. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. So what we're looking for, I just want to be clear on what we're looking for before we vote on this. We're looking to have a tender for a streetscape plan, basically. Okay, thank you. And that's the funding that we're looking for. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a few comments, but I'm going to vacate the chair, so I'll ask Deputy Mayor Malash to come over, please, and then I'll go make my comments.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For sure, we need to have this done in Harrow. And hopefully one day it'll be done in McGregor also. Now, with regards to funding, I believe point 2 says that council approves funding and the issuance of an RFP. I must ask, I want everybody to be aware that I believe this is just for the RFP, but that's not quite what it says in here, and I would ask the clerk if that's what this line means. This is just for the $40,000 approximate RFP? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, my understanding is this is the funding related to specifically the issuance of the RFP, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, I wrote down, there's no doubt that Harrow Center needs an escape plan as Essex Center has had. There's no doubt about that. I do have a couple of problems though with what we've discussed in the past, maybe 2 weeks ago. It has to do with the money end of it. We have a chance to get grants, but we've got to move this ahead. And I'm not against having this done. I'm just against moving it ahead so fast that we have no opportunity on behalf of the taxpayers to go out there and get some grant monies. You know, like every time I look at a big project, and they're not all big, linked to strategic priorities. Enhancing economic development activities through business retention and expansion, and that's what we sure hope to do here, and attraction of light industrial businesses and downtown improvements. Point 2 is what I'm coming to. Manage the town's, it says in here, infrastructure in a responsible and efficient manner. Now, it's not only the infrastructure here that we got to worry about. Every decision that this council makes falls under the same thing. And I heard earlier, oh, this is a election issue. These things shouldn't be election issues. These should be needs, wants, what we can do and what we can't do. So this shouldn't be an election issue by far. Every decision we make is on behalf of every one of our taxpaying citizens. That's why I can't see forging this ahead 4 extra months or 6 extra months without at least having the chance to get a portion of this paid by the government through grants. I would prefer to wait, those 4 or 6 months. Like Harrow Center has waited 100 years or 200 years for this to happen, as Essex Center did, and we're moving ahead. I want to move ahead, but give our taxpayers the opportunity to not have to take $40 out of the pocket. It might only be $15 out of their pocket. That's the only thing I think that I want to see held back with regards to this. I see no problem with going ahead with the $40,000, Mr. Chair, to get this thing off the ground. But to vote to do the whole thing without getting a chance at grant money, I would be against that. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Councilor Bjorkman next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to speak to that, one of my concerns when we were discussing this earlier, and I was talking with Councilor Bondi, is the financing of things that everything costs, and we were happy to see that the chamber was coming forward and putting some money up for it as well. We need that buy-in from our businesses, so that's terrific. Now, what we're looking at here, all we're talking about is the $40,000. Now, we've got some of it from our library surplus, some of it coming from our weed seed surplus, so there is money that's coming in that's tagged for this kind of activity already. And we aren't passing anything beyond this $40,000. We're going to get this plan in. We're going to have a consultant help us make a plan for Harrow. When it's time to institute that plan, when it's time to or initiate that plan, we will then look to upper levels of government to help us with those projects. There are no projects that are part of this $40,000 that we want to start on the next day. So this is all we're talking about, is the money that it'll take to do that streetscape plan, put it together, and after that, we will look for government funding to help us with the projects that come out of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bjorkman. Mr. Snively, Councilor Snively, I have 2 other speakers before you. So, Councilor Vokes.
Thank you, Chair. Look, just for the record, once again, I want to clear the air. Because if anybody knows what Councillor Bondi has been doing in terms of the streetscape plan and pushing for enhancement of the streetscape environment that she represents, nobody has carried and pushed that torch harder than her, in all due respect to her. Even though me and Councillor Bondi have our differences, I want to give accolades where accolades are due. And now her question was very clear and very simple. She wants to know where we're going to get the money. That's all she wants to know. And if she knows where the money's going to be rewarded from and she understands that, then she knows the project will move forward because the money's there. That's her concern at this point. In terms of this council doing anything and jockeying for electoral positioning as a result of that, Mrs. Councillor Bondi and anybody from specifically that area, that ward, it has absolutely nothing to do with the election looming. It's about simple hard work. Simple hard work by that lady, that gentleman beside her, and certainly that guy at the end. All of us as a council are contributing to it, but let's not kid one another. It's more specific to them and their particular wards and environment than it is of us in Ward 1, even though we support it and we want to see it be done. They have to carry that message, and they have to convince us as we try to convince them on other things. So to say it's an electoral positioning and jockeying for the records, that's not true. It's not even close to being true. And I want that cleared up here tonight because I don't want anybody reporting out that council's jockeying already as a result of the election coming up. Hard work by Councillor Bondi to get it done, nothing more than that. Waiting for grants. If this council sits around and waits for grants and the government of the day to rise the occasion, we won't get nothing done. Because we do get grants. We are awarded grants as a result of hard work by our administration, writing projects, submitting them to the government, and convincing them that we're the people for the money. But there's no guarantees. And I'm not specifically interested as elected councillor to sit on my laurels and wait for the government of the day to give me approval to move and enhance my environment in which I represent. And if taxpayers are on the hook for that, they're on the hook for it. It's no different than any other business we do. And I just want to go on record with that, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Vokes. I'm going to switch up back with the mayor now if he's comfortable with that. Okay. Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the position I take on council is not the position I take. It's the position the people under me push me to take. It's the empowerment that I get from the residents, from the chamber members, from the businesses. I don't want to have put Harrow in the corner again, right? With all due respect to our mayor. So, and the only reason I say that is because grants are conditional. We don't know for sure if we're going to get grants. And if you look at, just like Councillor Bjorkman said, some of these grants or some of these mechanisms of funding are very fitting to what we want to do. So with that being said, I do have a question to administration, and I hope we have the answer. I did email about this. How was the Essex Streetscape Plan funded? And then I'll continue. Let's compare, like, just so we know.
Ms. Hunter?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, the one for Essex was funded basically through tax dollars, and the BIA for anything that was over $30,000, they would contribute up to $5,000.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mrs. CAO. So if $30,000 of taxpayer money, we're kind of relative in the same kind of ballpark. We're not that far off. It's a few more years down the road, so we have inflationary costs. I really don't, we're sitting here nickeling and diming really about $10,000, $15,000 because everything kind of fits into what we want to do. Yes, you know, there is a little sense of urgency in this because we do want to get Harrow off and rocking and rolling. Everything is coming together. We're doing the CIPs in both Harrow and Colchester. We're slashing development fees. We are going to create, I hope we are going to create, the perfect balance or the perfect storm of Harrow and just kind of ignite it on fire. And that's, we've got the ball rolling. And to sit here and to stop that ball for 10, 15, even $20,000 just seems like I really honestly want to bang my head against the wall sometimes. When we vote on this, I would like to ask for a recorded vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Snively?
Through your worship, I agree with Councillor Bondi 100%. She said some of the things I was going to say. I met with Ms. Affleck on Friday, I think it was Friday, and she knows even at the amount of money that that we're going to give, if we give it tonight, she knows that there has to be more fundraising done in that end to enhance what they want to do. So she's aware of that. And she's willing to fundraise. So I just want to put that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snively. Councillor Rogers, did you have anything? So I'd like to get a motion to, Mr. Mayor, you want to speak? Can I get a motion first, and then everybody gets a chance to speak on it?
I would like to move that we move forward with the report and go out for an RFP for the Harrison Street plan.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Supported by Councillor Rogers. Okay, well, you're going to get the chance to make it right now. And Mr. Mayor, you have the floor first.
What can I speak to, sir, through the chair? What can I speak to? The comments that were made, the accusations that were made to me, directed at me in my opening statement? That's what I want to talk to.
I will allow that, Mr. Mayor, if you want to speak to that.
Yes. At no time did I say this is an election issue. I said at the previous meeting, it was brought up by a council member.
Point of order. Point of order. And my point of order is this. I never once said it was him. Not once. Never said it was him. Or made accusation it was him. I said to the media, and I want to be clear, that this is not an electoral process or push. Didn't say it was you. You said somebody said it's an electoral process.
So Councillor Folks, the mayor didn't say specifically that it was you that said it, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, please make your point as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'll do that. I didn't say this was a political issue or accuse anybody of using it as one. I am all for this thing. But I'm not for it at the expense of, I'm for it what this thing says. And it's to get an RFP, have a committee put together, and have some information brought back to us with regards to how much is it going to cost to fix Harrow up the way we want it. Let's call the vote. That's all this thing is about. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments, further comments? Councillor Folks.
Through you,
Mr.
through you, Mr. Chair, that Economic Development Report 2018-03, providing council with an overview of the project, be received, and that council approve the funding and the issuance of an RFP to secure a consultant for the development of a long-term streetscape improvement plan for Harrow Center.
Okay, thank you. And just before we vote, just a final comment from myself. I'm in favor of moving forward with the streetscape plan. And once that's developed, then we take a look at where we want to go from there. So I'll pass it to Mr. Auger to take the recorded vote.
On the question, Councillor Bondi, how do you vote? Deputy Mayor Meloche?
Support?
Mayor McDermott?
Support!
Councillor Vokes? Councillor Bjorkman?
Support.
Councillor Rogers? And Councillor Snively? So on the question, Councillor Bondi, support, Deputy Mayor Meloche, support, Mayor McDermott, support, Councillor Vokes, support, Councillor Bjorkman, support, Councillor Rogers, support, and Councillor Snively, support. With a vote of 7 in support and 0 opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Auger. And at this point, I'll pass it back to the mayor. And I apologize, I must leave. I have a family emergency, Mr. Mayor.
Item 8.2 on the agenda as adopted is Fire Report 2018-002, re-expansion of the Ontario naloxone program. That said report be received.
Moved by Councilor Bjorkman, supported by Councilor Rogers. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.3 on the agenda as adopted is Fire Report 2018-003, Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, public consultation on proposed regulations. That said report be received and that council support and approve the recommended resolution referenced in said report for submission on the proposed regulations public consultation.
Oh. Excuse me? Yes, sir.
Could we have a little discussion with the chief before we move the motion and just have some clarification on some of what's coming through with this?
Sure can. Chief, welcome. Mr. Arnell.
Through you, your worship, thank you for the opportunity. What I'm asking for tonight is council to make a resolution to the provincial government regarding two new OREGs that are going, that are in public consultation at current time. They close March the 11th. I know we can go out and make submissions through the Ontario Registry and put our comments, but as I've heard, resolutions from council hold a lot more weight. So what I'm asking is for council to look at these resolutions and provide this tonight. And just a little background on it. All this started with coroner's jury inquest, and they started a fire safety tech table. I'm part of that tech table, and we've gone through a long 14-month process and come up to where we are today. On the motions I'd like you to look at is there's an internship program, and as you go through a process, you don't always get everything you want. So, you know, I'm asking tonight that you try and help us get some. The internship program, where it stands currently in the OREG, is only firefighters hired. You got 24 months to train them. We're asking them to expand that. B, we're talking about the implementation period. For a lot of municipalities, and I'm going to talk in a minute about ours, but for a lot of municipalities, this is going to be very troublesome. And what we're asking is possibly to move the implementation period out a little bit, July of next year, or even out to the first of 2020. Reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. We have a provincial election coming up this year, so funding issues, which is another issue we're going to talk about, as well as a municipal election, which if there's any funding that's required, it will give a little more time to do that. D, we talk about the provincial government. In our consultations, they have said that they're going to look at funding, but we don't know what that looks like yet, so if we could ask them for that. And J is something that AMO had put in their submissions, and I'm sure the CAOs was provided with the AMO submissions. And what we're looking there is the provincial government provide liability indemnification for all municipalities going through this process. So to help out in case anything goes wrong. So AMO was pretty adamant at the table saying they'd like that. So just to quickly, the two regs talking about, one is mandatory training and certification for firefighters. I've been 43 years in the business, and we've never had mandatory training for firefighters. We've had all kinds of different training initiatives throughout the years, but never anything mandatory. So this is the first time they've ever made mandatory training. And with that mandatory training, there was a whole process that happened, and I can say that wholeheartedly, the town of Essex, we've gone through. There's three ways to certify a firefighter. One is actual certification, and they've done the testing. Two is grandfathering, which they did back in 2013, and the town of Essex at that time took full opportunity to enlist all the firefighters in the community and put them through for grandfathering. And January 1st of next year, everyone in a position will be deemed compliant. I can say that Essex Fire is 83% certified. That's grandfathered and or certified in it, not deemed compliant. So 17% of our people are going to be deemed compliant, and out of those 17%, we still have a few people that have to finish some testing, which would bring that up. So that's kudos to the town of Essex and mayor and council for allowing that initiative to happen prior to. And on top of that, when we came to council and made a change in our hiring process, we've already set the wheels in motion to ensure when we hire new firefighters, we've already put funding aside to make sure we train those firefighters to meet that certification. So we've already made that step. So we're well ahead of the bell curve. Knowing I got a report from one of our neighboring municipalities, they're talking about $100,000 in the hole to get caught up with training. So is this going to cost? Yes, and we will be back with a report once the OREG goes through. The cost will be for the town of Essex to maintain certification, not because we'll already have it. So there's things that we'll have to maintain, but this one municipality is $100,000 in the hole to get to there, and we're already there. And the other OREG talks about risk management, and there's just a few things in there I'm asking for you to consider to make on our resolution of council. So in there we talked about in liability. At the end of the day, fire service is going to be better trained. The municipalities are going to be better protected because the liability is going to fall onto the training that they do provide. And we believe that this is the right direction for the fire service to go, and town of Essex is in great shape to do this. So I'm asking for your indulgence and to send these resolutions off to the provincial government to see if we can help them or help us to get some changes in the OREGs, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that. Councillor Bundy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be worth us gathering any support from any other local municipalities for your resolutions to make our voice stronger, or do you think we're good just sending it in independently?
Sir?
Through your worship, I have forwarded out my report already to other municipalities. City of Windsor has a report going to council. Chief Lafrette, myself have been speaking on a regular basis on this issue, and he's got one going the 5th of March, I believe, and it has gone out to other fire chiefs in the county. So yes, it's out there, and we're trying to get. Problems is if you can't get it into a council agenda to get it as a resolution, we've still gotten all the information as well attached. The Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs has provided a document for all the fire chiefs in the province to use to be able to comment on the OREG, on the regulatory website.
To follow up, Mr. Mayor, my only thoughts would be when we pass and support this motion is just to send it out locally that our council did endorse it and does support you. And if it helps, it helps.
It's good. Anything further? Now we need a motion to receive the report, and Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. And we're supporting the recommendations with that also? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, our next report this evening is Infrastructure Services Report 2018-02, Ridge Road Geotechnical Investigation. That said report, enclosing the geotechnical investigation final report submitted by AMEC Foster Wheeler, be received.
Moved by Councilor Vogt, supported by Councilor Rogers. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Our next report this evening is Finance and Business Services, Report 2018-02, re-tax adjustments. That said report be received and that council approve the cancellation, reduction, and refund of the noted taxes in accordance with Section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act.
Moved by Councilor Vogt, supported by Councilor Bjorkman. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.6 on the agenda is Economic Development Report 2018-04, re-waiving commercial development charges. Said report for receipt and that council provide direction on whether it is desired to begin the public consultation process to amend Bylaw 1344 to reduce development charges for commercial development by 100% in the town of Essex for all areas that fall outside of the existing community improvement plan boundaries, remaining in effect until August 25th, 2019.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Bjorkman. Questions? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I read this, if we pass this tonight, we're not automatically waiving development charges. We are going to a public consultation period, which I think could only benefit us. And in looking at how much we bring in for commercial development charges, it doesn't seem like we would be out a whole lot. And it seems like possibly we could gain quite a bit if we, for example, landed one hotel. So I would be in favor of moving forward with the public consultation process.
Any other comments? I have one. I would be in favor of moving this without hearing from the public. Hey? We have to? Ah, too bad. Because you're right. There's more benefit than there is, to doing this. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to vote on this. All in favor? Motion carries.
8.7 on the agenda is Building Report 2018-01. That said report providing council with a summary of building activity for the month of January be received.
Is that Steve? Moved by Councilor Bjorkman, supported by Councilor Snively. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.8 on the agenda is Planning Report 2018-08, DB Media Billboard Lease Request. This is together with Bylaw 1679 for 3 readings this evening. That said report recommending that the town enter into a lease agreement with DB Media for leasing of lands to permit the retention of a billboard sign located on town lands be received and approved, and if council chooses to approve, Bylaw 1679 to receive 3 readings this evening.
By Councilor Bonnie, supported by Councilor Rogers. Any questions? Question, Councilor Rogers? Oh. Yes, okay. Councilor Bonnie, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that this is something council wants to monitor and do at a one-at-a-time basis. My question is to our planner, Mr. Watson. Do we have a count on the billboards now? Like approximately 10, 15 throughout the entire municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 10 that were approved by council. This is an established billboard that's been there for quite a few years. And they purchased the Oliver Signs Company, which had a lease and simply they want to take it over. So we have 11 under our control.
Thank you very much. Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.9 on the agenda is Planning Report 2018-09, Essex Crossing Street Name Application. This is together with correspondence from Essex Town Center Limited. That the correspondence from Essex Town Center Limited asking that council consider allowing the developer to name the streets in the Essex Crossing Division, together with Planning Report 2018-09 be received, and that if council chooses to so approve the request, that in accordance with Bylaw 601, the street names in the Essex Crossing subdivision be assigned as referenced.
Moved by Councilor Bjorkman. And action? Okay. Councilor Bondi, support with a question. Yes.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, my question is through our clerk because of this has come up on our agenda. A question came from the public to myself asking how the list is complied and if people are missing names, if the original list is missing names, how do people from the public get names submitted to the list to be considered in the future?
Through the chair, the only comment I'm able to provide is we discussed this a little bit earlier today, and originally in accordance with bylaw 601, I believe the respective legions were consulted to provide a list of names, and so the town has followed that process.
If I might just further to that, he's right, both legions, any veteran, their name went into the pool. Now, we had a system where the drum turns and the name pops out, and we use that name. But council does have the opportunity to deviate from that, and that's what this gentleman's asking for. I believe every one of these names is on that list, maybe with the exception of one. And in the past, we have allowed a builder of a project to name a street after his granddad or his son or something like that. Council has allowed that in the past, even though it was a veteran supposed to be. But we do have that opportunity, so that's just a little further information. Councilor Bondi?
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor. So if there's family members in our centers that have veterans in their family, should they go to the local legion?
They shouldn't have to. They should be in the legions, but it wouldn't hurt to go check, to double check. You know, I don't know whose the name is in Harrow, but Jimmy Nevin is the one in Essex Center who looks after membership in this one. And you could just go, you know, over there and someone would, to that, Mr. Rogers, and then I have Council Folks.
Thank you. I just want to be clear on how somebody gets their name on. So if a person is a veteran, but isn't necessarily a member of the local legion, would they be not allowed to be included?
They would be,
and they have been a
just as
resident?
long as they're a veteran. They should be included in that list. Yeah.
So their names have to be submitted?
If it's not on the list, I would say yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And I have Councilor Folks.
To administration, let's make sure we clearly understand this. And it's to administration on what you may know as of asking this question right now, because I don't. I know we had discussions some years ago about recognizing veterans first and foremost before we move to any, just, I don't want to say names in general, but names in general. And what does the town policy say? And if you don't know, I can understand you just wouldn't know at a whim like that. But I thought our policy said, irrelevant to the legions and what they say, that we would recognize veterans first and foremost, even with a poppy on the name on the street sign. And then after that's grown redundant and there's no opportunities there, we would move to this. And I don't want to slow down Mr. Valenti by no means, but more important than that is our veterans, people who have died for us. And especially recognizing them in the town of Essex where a street's named after them. So I just don't want to fleet this through and go, yeah, okay, good, let's do that. And veterans are left behind. Irrelevant to what we're saying here tonight and what we're questioning, I want profound description and documentation that says the town of Essex does this in terms of recognizing veterans. I don't want to isolate it to legions. I want to isolate it, even if we got to put a request out to family members through some type of advertisement that says the Valenti projects are looking to name veterans first and foremost. Does anybody have any interest? I don't want to leave any veterans behind. I don't. So does anybody know from administration what our policy says? And if you don't, I understand it. I'm not, all right? I just...
Hunter, would you like to explain it to him, please?
Or the planning department?
Who's doing it?
Through Mr. Mayor, All the names selected by Mr. Valente are on the list, and these are the lists of veterans that were adopted by council since 2004. So these names have been added by means of 2 schedules, and there are about 190 names now on the schedule, and I think about 18 have been crossed off. So all the veterans, all the people named in Mr. Valente's request are veterans from these schedules.
On here?
If
These are all
council,
veterans?
yes,
Oh, well, then-
they're all on there. If council wishes to add more, then I think it would be a question of a veteran submitting his name or people on their behalf to
Thanks,
the
Jeff.
clerk.
No, thank
To
you.
the clerk.
I'm glad that I raised a question. So for clarity purposes, they're veterans. Okay, so let's move along then. We've done our diligence. Thank you.
Wow. Excuse me, we could have moved on 5 minutes ago. You heard what Mr. Watson said, but you didn't hear what I said. I said exactly the same thing as he did. Exactly the same thing. So anyways, here we go. We're gonna move on. You wanna move on? We'll move
Sure,
on.
I
Any
sure
further discussion? Council Bondi?
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, if people are not on the list, they can email the clerk and get added to the list if they're veterans and they live in Essex. That's what we're agreeing on? Okay. Is that what we're not agreeing on?
Through Mr. Mayor, basically, there are 2 schedules that have been adopted by council over the years, which include the names that were given to council and approved by council. So people are free to submit names and to the clerk, but the clerk would have to then submit a bylaw to council to endorse these names as part of these schedules.
Okay, thank you. So that is great. The message out there is people can still submit names, and then the clerk will receive them and will adopt them as a bylaw.
Anything further? All in favor of this? Motion carries.
8.10 on the agenda is Planning Report 2018-10, Herald Community Improvement Plan Expansion, and this is together with Bylaw 1677, being a bylaw to enlarge the community improvement project area of the Herald Center Community Improvement Plan. That said report be received and approved, and if council approves the extension, Bylaw 1677, to be read a first, second, and third time this evening.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Vokes. Any questions? Councilor Bondi?
Thank you. I just want to thank administration for working very diligently on a couple of reports regarding, well, a lot of reports that we've asked for have come back in a very timely fashion. So I just want it to be noted that it's recognized.
Thank you for that. Anything further? I love everything about this report except the $25,000 if it hits over $250,000. And I'm not quite sure of why we would go from the grant up to $6,000 that we presently do to $25,000 if it hit a certain figure. But anyways, probably find that out if it ever happens. Councilor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask a question concerning CIP, not necessarily this exactly in here, but, and the question would be, does an expansion of a CIP area have to be a contiguous expansion, or can it be broken up?
Through Mr. Mayor, it has to be contiguous.
Okay, further to that. So what I was thinking one day was when we have some other businesses, most of our major businesses lie on main roads, which are particularly, mostly county roads. So could we expand a CIP to include all county roads within our jurisdiction?
Mr. Watson?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, you can either do that or adopt CIPs for different geographic areas within the town. We have 3 currently, and we're dealing with an expansion of the Colchester CIP right now along County Road 50. So, you know, basically the CIP is dedicated to areas that could use a shot in the arm, could use a revitalization, or could use some sort of economic incentive which will allow it to be a more integrated, more comprehensive type of area within the town. And so our focus has always been on basically first in the downtowns, and in Colchester more on the tourism recreational component. And as I said, we're heading, we'll be doing a public presentation on next Monday out in Colchester to talk about the expansion of the Colchester CIP right along County Road 50 from one end of the town to the other. But again, that's a contiguous area. It has certain characteristics and elements which make it an attractive area, and we're looking at ways of sort of adding more incentives for more kinds of uses which would complement what's out there right now. If you're looking at other parts of the town, the problem you have is you're starting to deal with a lot of isolated commercial or industrial establishments which really don't have any continuity. There's no sense of community there, and that's where it gets more difficult, because that's not really what a CIP is intended for.
Follow up on that? Yes, thank you. And that is why I'm asking if the focus could be an entity such as all our county roads within our town. Because many of those sporadic industries or businesses lay on county roads within our town that are our town businesses. And could that be identified as an entity on its own? It's just all our county roads.
We have to identify characteristics which are common to a certain area, and we also have to demonstrate that there's a need to provide some sort of private-public partnership which would enhance these areas. So again, I think we'd have to look at certain parts of the town and see if there are areas that we could deal with, as a comprehensive type of project area. But in isolation, based on a scattering of commercial industrial establishments, I would say no.
Anyone further? Anyone else? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.11 is Planning Report 2018-07, Site Plan Control Agreement for International Door Company, 1170 County Road 13, for receipt and approval, and this together with Bylaw 1676, being a bylaw to enter into said Site Plan Control Agreement for first and second reading and provisional adoption this evening.
Moved by Councilor Snivy, supported by Councilor Bondi. Any question, Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at the Accessibility Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was actually an issue raised by Councilor Vokes with one of our businesses uptown. And it has to do with site plan control and accessible parking spaces. So I'm not sure if it's even applicable with this one, but if there is an accessible parking space, our secretary is awesome, but I don't know if we've connected the dots fast enough because it's only been a couple weeks. But in terms of site plan control, there has to be a marking on the ground for the parking spot. The Accessibility Committee is asking that there also mandatory signage so that when there's snow on the ground, this is an issue that you raised, Councilor Vokes, when there's snow on the ground, you can't tell if it's an accessible parking spot. So we want to make sure there's a sign there too. Is that already in this site plan control, and did the planning get that comment, and is that going forward? Is that what we're approving on?
Yvonne?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just in response to Councilor Bondi's question, it's not applicable here. They don't have to provide extra parking, but we have had conversation with Doug Sweet, and we are going to make it a condition of site plan from now on.
Good idea. Thank you. Councilor Vogt.
So to read, if I could, so if it becomes part of the site plan, then any business that has only painted handicap accessible spot in the parking spot, as a result of that improvement to the site plan, they would now also require a facade sign. Is that correct in saying that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's a site plan control application for a new development and handicap parking spaces are required, then they would need to put up that signage from now on.
What about current facilities? Because without mentioning businesses, there's several banks in our downtown corridor. There's several banks in our downtown corridor where they have the handicap icon painted on the ground. But I've noticed when the guys come in, the people come in and push the snow. They push the snow right on top of the handicap spot. And then as a result of that, the snow's piled up on top of it. They can't use it. But if the sign was on the wall, because it's covered with snow, the people who remove the snow would see that as a handicap spot because they can see it there, and it would serve two purposes. One, for snow removal, to identify the spot for those removing snow, and secondly, it would identify, if it is snow covered, that's a spot. So how do we make that happen, or can we?
Through Mr. Mayor. Site plan control applies to new development, whether it's an expansion or a brand new project. And that's where we can introduce requirements under today's legislation and today's considerations. But we could also, for existing parking lots, when we're dealing with expansions or other kinds of development, we could probably negotiate that as well. There's also a possibility we might be able to consider it as part of our mini grant under the CIP program in those areas.
So to that, yeah, and I agree with you, Jeff. I don't think there's a business anywhere would really be reluctant to put the sign on. So just as a cordial invitation from the town and from our committee, I would really like maybe something sent out to them through however you choose to do it, that says, if you would you mind putting a sign up? Because under new site plan, it's a requirement. So we would ask that you kind of come along with the times in terms of that and help us out with that. And I want to say to Lynn, I brought this to Lynn and raised it with Lynn. So Lynn, I thank you very much for bringing that to committee on my behalf. Thank you.
All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 9, any reports from our youth member Hoffman this evening?
No report tonight.
Glad to see Howdy. I hope Ethan isn't home sick. We haven't heard from him, so of course not sick. Good to see you.
He's in Quebec up here. Yeah, he's okay. Any updates from County Council this evening through the chair?
No, the one I was going to make was with regards to the money kickback from the libraries, but that hit the press big time, like almost immediately that it was settled at County Council. So I think we're all aware of that, how much we all get back. Thank you. Councilor Vokes.
And thank you for raising that, because the reality is it's a result of this council, and pushing that initiative through the discussions that were held right at this particular county in the interest of our constituents that we represent, that's their money and it needs to be returned to them. That as a result of the discussions this council had, then I think it was very, very prevailed in the fact that county council agreed to return that money. So to all my council members and collectively, thanks to all of us for fighting that fight on their behalf.
Item 11.1, correspondence to be received, that the items of correspondence listed in 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share such information with the community.
Moved by Councilor Bjorkman, supported by Councilor Snively. Any questions? Councilor Bondy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my favorite correspondence to read is the Windsor-Essex County Environment Committee in there. And what I picked up this week was Earth Hour is March 24th at 8:30 p.m. So just possibly to our CAO, because our Director of Community Services is not here tonight, but perhaps for our March 5th meeting, Mr. Sweet can bring a little synopsis of anything that we're doing for Earth Hour. I think it's a really fun hour to celebrate as a community, and I know in the past our community services has done something. So if there's anything going on, it would just be nice to have that brought forward March 5th so we can share it with the community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
11.2 on the agenda, as added to the adoption agenda this evening. That the correspondence from Cynthia Cakebread, Manager, Recreation and Culture, dated February 19th, notifying council that the arts, culture, and tourism community will be hosting a sip and paint program on Thursday, February 22nd, between the hours of 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., be received and supported by council.
Moved by Councilor Rogers, supported by Councilor Vokes. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 12 on the agenda, committee meeting minutes, that the meeting minutes listed in agenda item 12, together with any recommendations noted therein, be received and adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Vogt, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Rogers and then Councillor Bonnie.
Now, we're receiving and adopting these. Does that mean that we're accepting the 5-year forecast, like the Coan Park, and we'll agree to expend the monies that they're looking for? It's a proposed budget.
Proposed.
Right. Yeah. So it's, yeah. We're just receiving their proposed,
Yep.
or adopting their proposed
Through the
budget.
proposal.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then Councillor Bonnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if anybody from the AC committee or administration knows what the mural is going to be like in McGregor Center. Or, I saw that we're doing a request for proposals for it. Like, when businesses come forward with a mural, we all make sure it comes to council and we vote on it. But I want to know if we're going to see it before it's up. If anybody has that answer, and then I have one further question after.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we did see it. It was a while back. It was the one that's, it's going to be the French mural that had the hands on it and the butterflies, red, white, and blue colors. We did have that brought to us. We did approve it, and I'm sure Cynthia can send you a picture of it, but it has been brought before us.
Thank you. Further to that, I don't believe council saw it. I believe the committee saw it. I don't believe council, I have seen it, but council has not seen it. And it's a pretty big deal putting murals up in, I don't think we have to go as far as public consultation, but I know that the one that they proposed at one point for the schoolhouse was just wrong. So I'm a little, and I'm not saying that this one's completely right. Our deputy mayor isn't even here I don't know if our deputy mayor has seen it. So, and I know that there was one put up on the Harrow splash pad that I didn't see. And I'm not saying I'm a control freak and I have to see everything, but I'm going to hear the complaints if people don't like it. So that's my comments about that. And just the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I just wanted to give council a mini update on the Moby mat. We are waiting still for a price from Doug. The price is going to be a little bit less than the 30 grand that we originally thought. We're thinking around 15, and we're asking to see some prices for some bells and whistles to start a fundraising campaign on it. So we're still waiting for a price, but the Accessibility Committee is forming a subcommittee to start fundraising for that. So there'll be more details to follow. I've been a little overworked and preoccupied lately, but I'm still on it, I promise you.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 15.1, the following notices of motion were originally presented at the February 5th meeting and are being brought for consideration this evening. First item, Councillor Snively, that administration provide a report that sets out the cost of bringing municipal services where they end on Mainstone to the lands west of Highway 3 along County Road 8 to the future intersection of Pinkerton and County Road 8. As moved by Councillor Snively.
Looking for a seconder? Councillor Bondy. Councillor Snively.
Thank you, Your Worship. The reason I brought this forward is I think council's aware of what happened in Oldcastle with the town being asked to expand on their tool shops there, which the residents took it to OMB, and OMB sided with the residents. I'm thinking, now, the town of Essex itself, number 3 highway, we are 10 minutes away. We're on a main artery going to Windsor. This is a great opportunity for us as a municipality to build a very, very solid tax base. And I'm asking for the costing of what it would cost to bring the services to the other side, number 3. Jeff, if you can answer this, the zoning of that property, is it done now, or is it's just in the process, almost finished, isn't it?
Mr. Watson?
Through Mr. Mayor, the zoning's in place now.
It's in place now. So this is an opportunity for our municipality. We're sitting back and we're watching what's happening in Oldcastle. This is an opportunity for us. I think as a council, and to be fair with the town, to build a solid tax base, we should be jumping at this. We should, once we get the costing services, I think we should go ahead and move the services on the other side. Be ready and go after it. Be proactive, be aggressive. Let's go after this industry, because I'm sure if we could land 5 or 6 of those tool shops, that's a very, very healthy tax base. Besides the tool shops, we have fabricating shops. They're all in that location of Oldcastle, and they got turned down by OMB for expansion. So this is the opportunity for this town. This is the opportunity to build a solid tax base. So let's go after it. Thank you.
Very much. Councilor Bundy, did you have your hand up?
No, I support the motion, and I think also just to add, if there's anything that administration, any other pie in the sky or any other out of the box ideas that administration or carrots, that we can throw at them, I think include that as well if you can. I think it's a great idea to think proactively on how to get investment here.
Very much. Councilor Votes.
Thank you. So in terms of that particular land, is that all, do we have that zoned right now industrial?
Through Mr. Mayor, there are 2 large properties there totaling about 80 acres, which are zoned for general industrial use now.
It is zoned.
Yes, it's recently put in place now.
So there's nothing we have to do in terms of that if we move with this?
Not in terms of zoning.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're not putting the cart in front of the horse, that's all. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
15.1.2, Councilor Bondi, that administration provide a report to council on how the Harrell Center streetscape project could be funded in order to try to expedite the commencement of the project in 2018.
Moved by Councilor Bundy. Need a second there? Okay, done. Like a dinner.
15.1.3, Councilor Rogers, that the town, in recognition of our rich cultural and diverse history, and February being Black History Month, designate and assign the name McCoy Park in honor of Elijah McCoy to the Colchester Lakefront Park, often referred to as simply the Colchester or Jackson Street Park.
Councilor Rogers moves. We need a seconder. Councilor Votes. Councilor Rogers.
Yes, I would like to make one change, if that is, I have been contacted numerous times over the last few days since this went more public, and many of the people felt that Elijah's first name should also be included in the park name if that should go through. So it would be Elijah McCoy Park. I would like to, for those who do not know who Elijah McCoy is, and I believe that most of us around here do, he's a Canadian-American inventor. He was born in Colchester, May 2nd, and it's up in the air whether it was 1844 or 1843, but he died October 10th, 1929. His parents were George and Mildred McCoy. They were escaped slaves from Kentucky, and they entered Canada, or Upper Canada at the time, in 1837. George was awarded 160 acres in Colchester Township, where Elijah was born and raised. Elijah, at age 15, left Canada for Scotland, where he apprenticed for 5 years as a mechanical engineer. The term real McCoy is often attributed to Elijah for his automatic oiler that he invented and was used on locomotives of the day. Over his life, he registered over 50 patents, and in September 2001 was inducted to the U.S. National Inventors Hall of Fame in Akron, Ohio. I hope I have support on this. I believe that a lot has been discussed here about heritage. This is certainly one of our heritage persons within our community, and I leave it up to council.
Okay, Councilor.
Through the chair, Councilor Vogt, you're okay with the slight change to Elijah? Okay.
Okay. Councilor Snively.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in agreement that we should recognize Elijah McCoy. I agree 100%. But going back in history, I read the book that Milo Johnson had out about Black history, and we got to remember, Colchester itself is history. Colchester Park is history. We go back to the first settlement. Colchester went stretched all the way from where it's at now, all the way to Essex. It was all Colchester at one time. This is history in itself. Then we broke it down into Colchester South, Colchester North. I don't think we should change that history. I think the park should be, the name of the park should stay as it is. As far as honoring this man, I agree 100%. I think we should do something in that pavilion. Maybe a nice big plaque and have some history with it, some literature with it, telling people, there's a lot of people that go in that pavilion, if you notice. There is a lot of people that visit that. Do a big plaque with a big write-up of history about this man. I think this is a good way to honor this man, but to go back in history, what we're doing, we're going back in history and we're changing history that was already there. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too agree that there's nobody we should honor more than Elijah McCoy for being born out there, being raised, and getting a start there. But we should also, there are many people out there that we can honor. We can go to Josiah Henson, who was one of the first people there and waited until they could buy property in Chatham and moved on from there. There's a lot of history, not unlike what we want to do with Heritage Gardens Park, where we have a history part of the garden where we celebrate the people from our town, the events from our town. We need to do the same thing in Colchester. To me, the one thing with Colchester Park is it's not a local park. Colchester Park is a tourist draw. It's a tourist destination, and it's something that we advertise outside of our area, and we need to make sure people know where Colchester Park is. And then I would take an area of Colchester Park and use that to dedicate to some of the history that's out there. So as far as changing it, deciding today just to change it, now perhaps we want to do that. Maybe we want to make a change. If we want to do that, then I think we need to open that up. We need to get the public to come into us, suggest some names, have some sort of a competition, if you will. But there's things that we need to do to give everybody an opportunity to be part of that. So I'm not in favor of changing the name of the park tonight, but I'm not against the idea of looking into it and looking into other members from the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Oakes.
Thank you. If you want to recognize somebody, what you really need to do is recognize somebody. And as a result of Councilor Rogers' endeavors to get this particular park named after, I'm sorry, the pronunciation of it, Elijah McCoy, in his endeavors to get it mentioned or get it named after him, he brings it to council. And it happens each and every time. Each and every time somebody endeavors to do something on behalf of a very humble and noble person, all of a sudden there's all kinds of people that should be recognized outside of this person. So my question is, all those people that should be recognized outside of this person, where were they 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago before Mr. Rogers brought this forward? Now that he's brought it forward, everybody wants to change the direction and the momentum that he's trying to muster in support for this guy, for this gentleman. I shouldn't call him guy, for this gentleman, right? So now, as a result of that, we're having discussions about it. There should be no discussions. He fits the criteria. He's obviously an iconic gentleman in our neighborhood, or in our history. And so I would encourage council to endorse the naming, and respectfully, Colchester Park is about as generic as you can get. It's about as generic as you can get. It was like it's a name of it, Colchester Park. So I just ask council that, look at, I understand there's a lot of people out there who are worthy and in need of naming something. But for tonight and for this file, we're not talking about everybody. We're talking about what Ron Rogers has requested. And I'm asking that you support his endeavors to have that completed on this gentleman's behalf.
Thank you for that, sir. I have 4. There's 2 more haven't spoke. Councilor Bondi, any comment? Yep, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to state that I'm certainly not opposed to having this discussion and to exploring the name, but I'm not 100% convinced in favor of it yet for some of the various reasons that Councillor Bjorkman said and some of the various reasons that Councillor Snively said. I think that the beehive is stirred, which is a really good thing, with Councillor Rogers on AM 800. I think it was this morning that I heard you, or yesterday morning. I just heard you. So now we've stirred the beehive and we're starting to get feedback trickling in. And then we're going to close the gate before we hear the rest of the feedback, and we'll say, oh, we made our decision. So I love the notice of motion process, but I think this time it didn't allow for quite enough time to hear some comments. And in the meantime, we can talk to the Heritage Committee too and make sure that we're making the right decision. And I really like the idea of doing a section of the park. I still think that even if we name it Elijah McCoy Park, a lot of people will still call it Colchester. Like, people will still call it Colchester. There's another, at the same time as this candle started burning, there was another candle that's burning in our community that's not really out there yet, with a family that is looking to make a private donation to the park. So I also don't want to scare away that private donation, and maybe that private donation will help with a Moby mat, for example. So I'm not opposed to it. Do I think the timing is ideal? No. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the motion tonight, but I think it's something we need to seriously consider and talk about. And our Director of Community Services isn't here either tonight, which I was hoping to get some of his opinions on that too.
Okay. We have our CEO, Mrs. Hunter.
Through you, Your Worship, I thank you, Councillor Bondi. I would just want to chew that when you say the Director of Community Services. I think also we need to bring into play here the Manager of Communications. We've just gone through, and I'm going to hand these out to you tonight, creating our tour pamphlet for 2018. I mean, there's a lot of things that are in the works that we have to be careful that we're not contradicting and that we're not, making these already out of date, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The other part of that is we do have a naming rights policy, and that even though it's meant to kind of speak to those things that are paid for by sponsorship, it's still a policy that tells us how we should deal with naming rights, and I think it's something that we should be looking at.
Mr. Rogers is the mover of the motion. You'll be last. Yep, I have a couple comments. I don't know. I think it's good that... Okay. Mr. Snively, would you like to take over the chair, please? And I'll go sit in your chair. You might.
Okay, Mayor McDermott, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be able to support this for the simple reason that municipality had a few phone calls stating Black history down there is more than one person. We have recommendations that why isn't so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, so I won't be able to support it for that reason. And also, we all got an email from a former council member who gave us a lot of history with regards to Colchester Park. I am not against recognize this man anyways, and I've heard it said, have a big plaque someplace, have something for the man. And not only that, gentlemen, we may have another half dozen people that have really benefited, as Councillor Bjorkman said, to our area. 225 years of history. There's a lot of people out there that we may recognize, and that's what we should be doing, not changing the name of the park. For me, that's what I don't think we should do, but do something on behalf of each and every one of these people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I can just say one last thing. We do have, pardon me?
Just now you're speaking.
Oh, okay.
You can't speak to this motion a second time, Mr. Chair, that's all. Councilor Rogers, you have the last word here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand there is a naming rights policy, and I do, as I responded when I was given that is for associations or businesses that want to pay to have a name placed on something that the municipality owns. And who do they come to? They come to council, that council gives those rights away. I am a member of council, and I am coming to council. I am at council, and I'm just looking for council to bypass well, I don't think the policy precludes council from naming anything that they want to name that is council property at all. It's looking strictly at the financial end of it with businesses. The greatest pushback, I have had some pushback by the public, very, very little. Most of the responses or comments I've gotten from the public have been very positive towards this. The greatest pushback has been right here. And I would like to ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you, sir. Sir? Let me get direction. Let me get direction, please. Can you make a change? It would have to come from Councilor Rogers. Yeah.
It's your prerogative.
Okay.
On the motion that the town, in recognition of our rich cultural and diverse history and February being Black History Month, designate and assign the name Elijah McCoy Park to the Colchester Lakefront Park. Councilor Rogers, how do you vote? Councilor Snively? Councilor Bondi? Mayor McDermott? Councilor Vokes? Councilor Bjorkman? With a vote of 2 in support and 4 opposed, the motion is defeated.
Anyone else like to make a motion? Mr. McCoy, like I certainly would, but Councilor Snively.
Through your worship, I'd like to make a motion that we do something for Mr. McCoy in a way of a nice plaque and some Black history in our pavilion, or another good place. We got that schoolhouse. We've done nothing with that schoolhouse. This is a good opportunity to maybe start using that school for literature. But anyways, that's my motion is to do something. The first one is the plaque in the pavilion with a write-up about him.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? I'll second that for discussion. And to the motion, Councilor Rogers. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To that motion, there already is a plaque in Colchester Park with Elijah McCoy's name, picture, and history on it. And as far as the schoolhouse, we cannot do something for Black history at that schoolhouse. Blacks were not allowed in that schoolhouse.
Anything else? Anyone else to the motion? Okay. All in favor? Oh, Councilor Bjorkman, did you have a comment? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, to your worship. I don't think, I won't be supporting the motion, just in the sense that I don't think we're at a position now, after our discussions, to have a motion. We can give direction to administration that we want to see something in our park developed in recognition of the people that founded Colchester in that area, the different people that are responsible for what we have there. I think that's a direction we should give. We don't need a motion to say we're going to have a plaque. That may not be the thing we want to do in the end. But it is time. The discussion started, as Councillor Bondi stated, the discussion started to make sure that we're recognizing the people that deserve it out there. So I won't be supporting the motion. I think it's just time for direction to move us in that way.
Councillor Snively.
Through your worship, I'll rescind my motion. I agree with Councillor Bjorkman. We should do something in the park to recognize the name.
And as the seconder, I will agree with you, sir. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we could possibly hand the baton over to the Heritage Committee and have them kind of work on something and maybe brainstorm some issues. And any counselor that wants to go to the Heritage Committee meetings can go and participate too. This way it's not just one person saying, you know, it could be a group of people agreeing on what is best for the area. That's just a suggestion. Not saying anybody has to do it, just.
Councillor Oakes.
Thank you. Look, I really don't know what protocol we're following here in terms of speaking, because there's, I don't know if there's a motion on the floor, but we're obviously opening up for discussion as reiterated by Councillor Bondi. So with that being said, as council, I hear your concerns. I hear your concerns in terms of naming, and I truly hear your concerns of, are we doing it right? And the jury could be out on that. So all I'm asking is if I could put a motion forward, if I'm allowed to do that, that says after a latency period of 3 weeks to 1 month, if nobody comes forward requesting the naming of that particular park after any other individual, we've done our diligence, and at that time it will be named after Elijah McCoy. If somebody else comes forward with the request on something they feel so equal or parallel to the request, then this council administration will look at that one and review our decision as to who we appoint it to. But if nobody comes forward, we've done our diligence. And then we can faithfully name it after Elijah McCoy because we've done our homework. That's all I'm asking council to do tonight.
You can make that motion right now, sir.
Yes, I would like to make that a motion. I'm looking for a seconder, and I'm looking for support of that. Because if we do that, we've done our diligence responsibly as a council. We just didn't hand it to no one.
So your period just for the clerk, 3 months, 4 months, or 3 weeks, 4
I'm
weeks?
suggesting 3 weeks to a month that we get it
Okay.
out there.
Yep.
That we're looking for any other interested parties. And
Okay.
then we will decide who it's going to be named of. If I could, your chair. We did the same thing with Frank Matty's on the walkway because help me out, Mrs. Clifford come along and Mr. Reynolds come along. Because we didn't know who to name it after. And we put it out there, some names come forward, because it was just going to go to Frank Matty's. And council is with this, said, hey, that's not fair. And we all agreed it wasn't fair. So we took opportunity to get the word out there. We're looking for people. They come forward. We did a draw on it, and out of those 3 names, and ironically, Frank Matty's rose to the top in that draw. So all I'm asking is we at least have that opportunity to respect this gentleman and anybody else.
We have the motion, we have a seconder. Councillor Rogers, discussion. Councillor Oakes has already spoke, so you'll get the last shot, sir. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will support the motion, but I would like to see a little bit more of a time span because I don't think 3 weeks. I think we should give it a little bit longer. And I would like some input from senior administration too, because even though the cost could seem minimal, there still might be a cost with changing the name. And I want to hear back, like, you know, how does it fit in the, you know, into everything that there's balls already rolling. So how can we fit it in, right? So I would like to see like at least 2 months And this way we can be diligent and we're not shotgunning something and it's not really fast. And there will be lots of opportunities. We can talk about this, right? We can talk about this next week with the public at the Colchester Community Improvement Expansion Program. We can use, I really want to give enough time for our communications director to give out some notification on it so we can get some buzz on social media. I'd really like the Heritage Committee to have some involvement. And if we're doing it in 3 weeks, we're kind of saying, you know, the Heritage Committee's involvement is nothing, right? Like, anytime usually I bring something forward from the Accessibility Committee, it's heavily vetted through them. So I would like to see it at least 2-month period if I was going to support it. So I don't know, I'm asking the councillor to allow that friendly amendment.
I would love to support a friendly amendment to that. Look at whatever it takes to get the job done, the council collectively.
Okay, 2 months, Councillor Bundy? Okay, and Councillor Wright, okay, that's been okay. I have Councillor Snively.
Yeah, I was going, through your worship, I was going to ask for the same thing, a little longer period, because we do have families in the area, like the Johnson family. If you're going to talk about black history, you know, there's going to be a lot of names that come out there. The Johnson family goes back, Zip Johnson, he was you're going back 100 years plus his family. So, you know, you're looking probably 150, 160 years in the area. So, and I agree, the Heritage, Rita, and you should be involved, very heavily involved with this. This is an important issue, and I'm not saying we shouldn't recognize this man here, but there's going to be other names come out there. Believe me, there is. I've had one phone call already from one of the black families. There's one other name that come out there already. So, thank you.
Anyone else to the motion? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I won't be able to support this one either because it's, what I understand, Colchester Park. I don't care if you name the thing after me, I wouldn't vote for it. You know, we're going to get, like you said, 20 names. What are we going to do? Name it Johnson, McCoy, McDermott, Bondi, Rogers Park? You know, like, I can't support changing the name of that park for the reasons Mrs. Hunter gave and reasons other people have given me. So I can't support that motion either. So, but that's her. I'm done. Anyone further? Nope. Ready for the question? Okay. All in favor of the motion, if we all know what it is, say. Okay. Opposed? Motion carries.
Through your chair, during the adoption of the published agenda, Councillor Bondi made reference to a notice of motion for presentment this evening.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put forward a notice of motion for the next council meeting that the council of the town of Essex send a request to AMO to consider them providing a pay-for-service childcare at AMO conferences during conference hours. Pay-for-service means people who go will pay for it, not expecting a handout. So I'd like to put that notice of motion forward for the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Item 16, any reports from council members this evening? Sorry.
Councilor Vokes, if you're going to discuss this, there's no discussion. This is just a notice of motion. We'll discuss it next meeting. What's your...
My question is, when is the right time to put in a notice of motion?
Please.
I'm sorry. You can do it a couple of different ways. At the meeting today or tonight, when we were adopting the published agenda, Councilor Bondi introduced that she had a notice of motion. You can do it when we get to the area of notice of motion, or you can call ahead of time and say, I want to put a notice of motion on tonight's agenda. There's
Okay.
various ways that you can do that.
So I look at it a little more layman than that, just and even for our viewing audience in terms of the agenda. Like, where it says reports from council members, why doesn't it say 15, if you will, submission of notices of motion? No, I'm not wrong. I'm not referring to that. I'm not doing that. I'm not wrong. What I'm talking about is prior to 16, if you were using this agenda schedule, it would say submission of notices of motion from council. So the viewing public knows, they can see what we're doing. I'm just saying, it frames it somewhere in the agenda.
So through the chair, normally, item 15, notices motion, is structured in two different ways. The first part of section 15 will say notices motion. You got it. That they were presented at the last meeting.
Right.
The second section that we normally include is that these notices of motion are being presented at this meeting will be brought forward.
Right.
However, the motion for tonight was just added as part of the adoption agenda, so we didn't have an opportunity to put it on the published
Right.
agenda.
But all I'm saying, I don't want to prolong it, and I don't want to micromanage it. All I'm asking for is that the agenda, we have 14's new business, 15 is submission of new notices of motion, and 16 would be notices of motion submitted, which we would deal with. Right? So I know as a counselor, as this tonight's meeting progresses, as a matter of fact, just for the record, I wanted to ask council to put a notice of motion forward to have the discussions about the lack of response from Eric Hoskins, our health minister, in terms of ER. And I don't know when to submit that. But if it said right here, submission of notices of motions, I would know that's when I do it. Because the way it is right now, sometimes we do it.
Or if I sat beside you still, you'd know when to do it.
Right? Like sometimes we do it in prior to.
Okay, let's stop and get to the point. What are we gonna do, or what aren't we gonna do? Yes, Mrs. Hunter.
Look at something,
Thank you,
Councillor
Don.
Vokes,
Yes,
and
thank you. That's
get
all
back
I'm
to you.
asking. Thank you very, very much.
See no problem with doing just what Council Folks wants in there, myself.
Reports from council members this evening.
Where do I wanna go to? I could start with Councillor Bonnie, in case she has to leave early. Okay, Councillor Rogers? Larry,
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate what we spoke about at the last council meeting with Chris Ives here. The Homestead during March break has events all week long, as well as the Saturday before has maple, I can't remember what the full name is, but it's the maple harvest or maple event on the the Sunday before. And then all that week is Maple Week at the Homestead.
Okay, Councillor Bjorkman?
So can we just put announcements and reports together, because I'm never sure which one I'm doing.
Yes, go ahead.
Anyways, just a reminder, it's out on our Facebook page and on our web page that we are hiring students for the summer right now. The town is actively taking applications till March 2nd. So anybody out there that's got kids that are looking for summer work, that's until March 2nd. I did want to mention again about the Sip and Paint that's happening this week on Thursday night for the ACT Committee at the McGregor Community Center. It's $35 a person. And just as kind of a report, just that we're all aware that the party discount in Essex Center is closed, had their last weekend. And there's a lot of us that want to thank Brian Rose, who is the proprietor, and his staff that worked there. They were tremendous. They took a great deal of care with their patrons that they had in the town, and we enjoyed them for years, and we're going to miss them a lot now that they're gone. So Thank you to Brian and his staff.
Sure, Councilor Vogt.
Well, I'm going to take advantage of this to I want to put a notice of motion in. Like when can I do it? Yeah, okay, I will. Like, see what I mean? Like, anyway, no, I'm all set.
Okay, go ahead.
Item 18, bylaws, 18.1. Bylaw 1672, to authorize the execution of agreement between the County of Essex, Town of Essex, Lakeshore, LaSalle, and Tecumseh for third reading this evening.
By Councilor Bonnie, supported by Councilor Rogers. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Bylaw 1674, to confirm the proceedings of the February 5th regular council meeting.
Moved by Councilor Vogt, supported by Councilor Snively. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
And bylaw 1678 for two readings to confirm the proceedings of this February 20th regular council meeting.
Councilor Bondi, Councilor Bjorkman, any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Looking for adjournment. Councilor Vogt, Councilor Bjorkman, question? Oh, yes. All in favor? Motion carries. We have an enclosed session. You want to,
So it'll stay in
you want to
recess.
announce that? Okay, we have an announcement with regards to the in-camera.
Through you, your worship, if I may, I wasn't prepared to ask our building and bylaw enforcement officers to stay while we go through regular, while we went through the previous drainage meeting. So they've gone. I would really like them to be there as well. We have members of staff that are trying to get to Nelson Silvera's father-in-law's wake tonight. And so we would ask if we can carry this meeting over to another date.
Motion by Councilor Snively, Councilor Rogers, yes. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. So we're home. If you have any of those in cameras, you want to give it back to the clerk or Mrs. Hunter. Okay?